Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Jacqueline Coley, an editor at Rotten Tomatoes. Before we're joined today by our guests, I want to let you all know that SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programs to SAG-AFTRA artists. This conversation is made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. Over the past year, the foundation has given over $6.5 million in COVID relief to more than 7,000 performers. If you are a SAG-AFTRA artist and in need of help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you all for your support. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, Carl Lumbly, Emily VanCamp, and Wyatt Russell from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Hello, everyone.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. I just have to say it's incredible to talk to you guys after this whirlwind of a season. It felt so short, yet so much like every week. I was just anticipating every episode. But Sam, I'm going to start with you because what's so interesting with this is when I first spoke to Malcolm and Carrie, they definitely told me that this was going to be different. But I have to wonder what you were thinking when you first heard, hey, we're going to do this. And more importantly, we're really going to examine this idea of superheroes and supremacy. I just want to know what your thoughts were about that.
It was nerve-wracking. I was very shocked and afraid. I didn't want to be the guy in the first Marvel project that sucked. So I didn't know what to make of it. But once we got into it and they promised me that they were going to keep the same level of work that we've been doing on the movie screen, from the movie screen to the television screen, I got excited about it. Once Kari and Malcolm were put on the show, I got excited about it. I think, everybody was kind of weird about what was going on. It was so secretive. Sebastian and I had our meetings on the same day, and it was like, so what are you going in for? Like, I don't know what you're going in for. So it was, I thought it was going to be a disaster, especially putting me and Sebastian together and letting us go.
Well, just to follow up on that too, I mean, I don't know how much they told you early on, but was it there from the pitch, this idea of, again, you as Sam Wilson taking the shield as a Black man? Was that part of that first initial conversations, or was that something that you guys sort of discussed after you guys signed on?
No, it wasn't. We never talked about that when the pitch of the show came about. It was more so about the continuation of what was going to happen with the Shield, if it was going to be Bucky or if it was going to be Sam. And, because at the end of Endgame, Sam didn't accept the Shield. He told Steve, it feels like this is someone else's. It feels like it's yours. So at no point in time was he excited or looking forward to the idea of becoming Captain America. So it was more so, Kevin and Nate telling me, we're not sure what's happening. So the show will be more about the idea or the archetype of Captain America, not you becoming Captain America. So I was really confused leaving out of the meeting. But I wasn't excited either. I hated the idea. I thought it was going to be an awful idea.
I appreciate your honesty on that, because I will just go ahead and say, Certified Fresh, I don't know how many streams on Disney Plus, and lighting up the internet every single week proved you very much wrong. But I appreciate you being the first one to say, you didn't think it was going to be a home run. Sebastian, what about you? I mean, again, it sounds like you guys didn't have that much going on to it, but what were you excited to sort of explore with this character? Because I feel like with your character, in his names, there's been several chapters. I mean, there was Bucky, then there was the Winter Soldier, and now we're getting to meet sort of James, which is the guy that is left after these two previous chapters. So what about that sort of intrigued you?
Totally. No, I just think, all that was communicated at the time was, look, we love these two characters, Sam and Bucky, and we love them together. And we want to make sure that we get the time to focus on them And this is again following the footsteps of Infinity War and Endgame, where I think our characters had been established to some extent, and again, mine way more so than Anthony's character, right? But then in the last few movies, I felt like at least what was communicated to me was that they hadn't gotten a chance to really explore them as much as they would have wanted to. So that was the beginning conversation for the show. How they were going to do that at the time was not communicated, just that they wanted us together and to further kind of, expand on our chemistry, and that was going to be exciting and super fun to me. And the idea of just 6 hours, obviously with these characters, was also really exciting because it felt like we were going to get to kind of get, much deeper into who they were and what their backgrounds are and where they come from.
Awesome. Emily, I have to say, if this show had a birth, it was that scene where you're giving Steve the shield and, Sam and Bucky are in the back seat with just that look. Like that was where this buddy cop sort of moment sort of happened. But what's so interesting with your character is the layers that came upon that scene when we find her in this new iteration and the cost of that. I'm just curious how excited you were to sort of explore that, because it's a very different look from, she's very, sort of the ambitious, I'm fighting for what's good and right. And at the beginning of this, when we find her in a completely different place.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I thought that Sharon had sort of been put to bed. So it was really interesting to get the phone call that they wanted to bring her back. And I was sort of kind of like everyone else interested in how they wanted to do that and what this was all about, really. And they gave us little snippets, I think. But for me, it was, look, we want to just revisit Sharon in a totally different way, and really kind of address everything that happened previously and why we haven't seen her for so long. So for me, that was very exciting. And obviously just, working with these guys is always so much fun. So it was exciting, but I think there were concerns with everyone as to how this was going to play out on, on the small screen and what that was going to look like. And if the quality was going to be there, what the story was going to be like. There were just so many questions. And I think ultimately, it couldn't have turned out any better. And I'm glad everyone sort of took that leap of faith. But for Sharon, it was just so much fun to see her in a different light and to kind of put the sort of Steve Rogers of it all to bed and sort of move on in this new way. And of course, we see that, she's really gone, to the dark side. But I enjoyed it so much. And it was just great to get to revisit all of these characters and be a part of this.
Yeah, I want to see like a drinks between like Hawkeye and Sharon, like just like, when you break bad, what does it look like? Like that would be really interesting for me. And I do like that people have gone past that kiss because Lord knows the internet has had so much. I'm so glad
and I'm so happy that now, like you say, that the birth of that scene was really these two guys and their journey. We get to move past that and sort of, delve into the characters in a different way. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's so interesting too, because obviously the MCU has been going on now something 13, almost 14 years, and there's so much history behind it, but even more so in the comics. And Carl, with your character, what I really loved as someone that knew about Isaiah already, because I had read the comics and I was already understanding as soon as I had heard what they were thinking about doing with this, what it was going to be. But I'm just curious with you, because this not only coming into this iteration in the MCU, but I think you were the first Black superhero I saw on screen with Mantis. And I'm just curious for you what it is looking at this, which is like 6 movies being filmed back to back when you guys were shooting that show where, I loved it, but it did look like they were giving you those millions of dollars per episode. I'm curious what it's like to book in the two like that.
Well, we were able to mask the massive amount of money that was put behind it at the time. I think that was a credit to our producers. It didn't look like we had all the money we had. That I don't really know about it. I'm just offering that as a possibility. Entering the MCU universe was quite wild because it's extant in the culture, and I've enjoyed different things, but I had no idea who Isaiah was. I'm not a comic book cat. My son sort of pipped me to his importance and the fact that at the time in early 2000s, they were really trying to examine the Tuskegee experiment. So that was all I kind of knew about it. I knew the text. I knew what Malcolm had written. And I thought that was pretty beautiful. I also was intrigued by the idea of a man who, no matter what he had lived, if somebody showed up at the door, his first question is, who is it? And then his second, well, let him come in. He might be here to kill me. So he's got a kind of an ease and an acceptance of everything that has happened in his life. And that 40 years inside that time of experimentation and incarceration, that's in there, but he's out, he's alive, and nobody knows exactly what it was. All we know is he's out, and he doesn't have a tremendous expectation about what the world has to offer. So he looks at someone like Sam with envy because, Sam is youthful. Sam has ideals. Sam, maybe in his mind, is being naive. And so he feels he can offer something to help out this poor young man. And lo and behold, he gets information and a change in his worldview. So it's kind of beautiful.
That scene, so many moments, but particularly when you and Sam are going back and forth, I definitely want to talk about that because it, and this is a testament to what Malcolm and Kari did, because it's an illustration of generational divides within the African-American community, the audacity of equality that, young people feel, and sometimes when they discuss it with the older generation. And I definitely want to talk more about that. But Wyatt, sir, I have to talk about your character and you, because you're a great actor. I just have to say it. And I will base it on the number of people in my comments that just were not a fan of every time you came on screen. And I, as somebody that lives in this, had to remind people, it's like, this is an actor. You really love him as an actor because he made you so believably hate him. But I mean, it's not just that, because underneath that, the reason why people love to hate the character is because you brought such an earnestness to his sort of downward decline. And I'm curious how you were doing that, because in the hands of somebody else that could have been so one-dimensional, but there were still dimensions within his just awfulness. And I'm curious what conversations you sort of had to sort of bring that to the character.
When I first went in to meet Kari and Zoe, that's sort of what they knew that they were asking of whoever was going to play John Walker. And there was a lot of freedom in it because we didn't really know when humor, if any, was going to be needed, or when earnestness was going to be needed, or what the exact tone was going to be, just because it was a new character. He was antagonizing. They didn't know what kind of antagonist that it was going to end up being when you put the puzzle pieces together. So what was fun was, you could probably cut together an entire role where John Walker's like a clown. There was a lot of different ways to do it. So we kind of did a range of things and would do versions that had more humor and versions that were more earnest, and that was my challenge, I guess. But it was really fun because you get to do lots of different versions of things and then put it into the hands of people who are going to edit it and cut it together, and they're ultimately creating the tone. So you just have to trust the people that you're working with. And when you're working with Anthony and Sebastian, and I didn't get to work with Emily, but and Daniel, it's easy. It's like you do all kinds of different things. You're having fun, and they make it really easy to do a wide range of versions of each thing. So I'd love to say that it was all very calculated, and But it was in a way, but in other ways it wasn't. So, there was a lot of trust went into just going, look, just do it a million different ways and see what ends up on the cutting room floor and what ends up on the screen.
Well, what ended up there was very powerful. Like I said, just watching it myself, like with other people, just seething a bit. It's a testament to the filmmaking and the storytelling. And I'm sure really fun for anybody to play a good villain. On the other side of it, though, Sebastian, what I really loved about this, and I think it's when we look at extending the storyline, you can't really have moments like Bucky in a therapist's office when you're talking about these big sweeping movies. You can't have those sort of quiet moments, which I thought was just such an interesting touch, because in his mind, Bucky is of a different generation. And so that's like probably such a painful moment for him. But as an actor too, just playing all those different layers, I just thought that would been such a cool scene to sort of dissect. And I'm just curious how you approached it, both with his aspirations to be better, but also in the fact that I'm sure he just thinks therapy is hokum, like not about it.
No, there was, that scene was written, was actually, I think, much longer even. It was like a 5-page scene. And then we were always looking for the temperature of it, in terms of how sarcastic is he, there were takes that we did that were very funny, and there was a version of that scene that was actually more comedic. But what I loved ultimately is that they decided to go with something that was more grounded and realistic, and yeah, it was nice to have a scene like that to start off with, because at least it sets up for us the journey of where he has to go, where he's at sort of at the end of Endgame, is very much in a sense of kind of a lack of identity, and fortunately, he has the capability to sort of reinvent himself and re-educate himself. And really his arc in the show, from my perspective, was always sort of a re-education and a re-kind of calibrating of, okay, who am I and what do I stand for, and what can I contribute? How can I contribute? I think that in a way he represents, it's the PTSD of war and again of a soldier who sort of like enlisted a long time ago and then has kind of never really had his own choices to sort of make his own choices. And now he finally does. And what he does and he decides to do is what I think is most impactful. But yeah, it was, to have a 5-page scene like that, sometimes you definitely don't get that in a 2.5-hour movie.
Yeah. And again, incredible. And it's definitely one of those ones where I'm just like, yeah, this is definitely why I get why they wanted to do this. You always ask when you have this whole pantheon of movies, why they would want to explore stuff. And I can understand that's it. Anthony, with Sam, Isaiah says it, they'll never let a black man have a shield. And that's just such an incredible moment when y'all have that scene together. But then moving on to episode 6, when he's in the costume, I'm just curious for you, actors, you guys are storytellers first and foremost. You're just trying to be honest to the characters. But I have to think of 2 moments that had to be a bit surreal. And that would be that moment preparing for that grand speech, incredible speech at the end of season 6, but then also then going to Disneyland and unveiling Sam Wilson at Disneyland and knowing, I think, as you said, there's going to be an entire generation of little brown boys who are going to see this forever and it's immortalized. So I'm just curious, that kind of surreal moment, just knowing like, you just took a part and now, however many years later, it's going to have this global impact.
Well, it's funny because I truly think it mirrors the idea of my life mirrors the idea of Sam Wilson as a character. Because you have to remember, Sam Wilson is not a superhero. He's a guy who went out for a jog and became an Avenger. So I feel the same way. I'm a dude that went to a meeting and I left as Captain America. So it's like, it's completely, dumbfounding and unexpected. But at the same time, it's a rewarding feeling not only, the idea of being Captain America, but to be a part of this institution that's known as Marvel, because, it affords us the opportunities to do really interesting, fun, different types of roles, while at the same time building our fan base and doing it in a classy way. I mean, we could, these movies could be really bad, and we could have to, talk about really bad movies, but in a good way, because we've all been there. And it feels good when you have something that is good and people like it, and they like your character and they're looking forward to it, and you're happy to sell that product. But we've all been there when it was the other way.
I guess it makes everything much more sweeter too. And to know that, this is going out to SAG, but also just the show in general. I mean, Marvel and Disney are pushing this out as a huge FYC campaign, because they believe that it is not just an entertaining piece of work, but it's also so much craftsmanship went into it. And Emily, I know the guys always get to talk about the stunts, but I want to talk about you and the stunts, because I feel like, well, come on.
She was very bruised up. She was very bruised up. I saw her 2 days after, and she looked like the Chick-fil-A cow. She had black spots all over her.
By the way, talk
wrong.
about an unbelievable reintroduction of a character into a show.
Yes,
right.
Thank you.
Kind of crazy, man. You're like, what?
What happened? I know. Yeah. My body felt it too. Whoa, that's a reintroduction.
Well, let's break it down. First of all, when did you know that it was going to go this deep? Because I mean, we've seen Sharon, she's got the gun. She's definitely done her thing here and there, but this was, again, an entire level up. When did you find out you were going to do it? And then talk about that prep work. And were you like, what did I sign up for? Like, was it the happiest moment? Like, walk through that sort of realization of, what did I get myself into?
Well, again, you kind of get tidbits when you sign on, but sort of what Anthony was saying, you have faith that it's going to be this super awesome experience. So you kind of know it's going to be physical. I didn't know to that extent. But I was really pleased, because in the comic books, Sharon is such a badass, and we never really did get to explore that side of her. So it was a ton of fun. When they showed me the previs of what we were going to be doing, I kind of had like a moment of, oh, all right, we have how many months, and how am I going to do this? But again, Marvel sets you up with the best team possible, and you just train and put as much time in as you can. And it was fun. It was great to see that side of Sharon. I really enjoyed it. It was worth all the scrapes and bruises. And it was just interesting because, they sort of kept scaling back on the weapons. So first it was guns, and then they took those away, and then it was knives, and they took those away, and then it was like, oh, well, maybe she'll find a pole along the way. You're just like, okay, all right, well, I better get prepped for this. But it was a ton of fun, and that one sequence actually did take quite a while to figure out and to choreograph. And you see it for like a couple minutes on screen, but if you're not prepped, then you really get messed up. So they definitely took the time to get me ready for that. And yeah, it was just so much fun. I was so happy to see Sharon in this new light,
Yeah. No, there's a great doc that actually is executive produced by Michelle Rodriguez that talks about stunt performing and female stunt performers. And yeah, the whole time I was thinking that, I was like, I know Emily did a lot, but like everybody, I'm sure that is like a group effort to just pull that off. And it was so incredible. That's got to be on the highlight reel when they're going up for best stunt coordination without question. Sorry, fellas. I know y'all did your thing, but that's up there. Carl, I talked a little bit about this earlier, but I really want to kind of hone in on it, because I feel like the conversation that Isaiah and Sam have is similar to a conversation that like fathers and daughters have, or, family members have throughout generations, which is this idea that the new generation is always maybe going to kind of push to better. And I'm paraphrasing someone who I could not find to give them credit, but they said of the Captain Americas, Chris Evans is Captain America, is the Captain America wants to be. John Walker is the Captain America that America tries to pretend that it's not. And Sam Wilson is somewhere in between. And so I'm just curious what you think was Isaiah's thought process? If you think at the end of this, he's going to think that this is still achievable, or do you think that he's still going to have the same thoughts that he had at the beginning of that conversation? And more importantly, what do you hope for this next chapters, or what would you hope for the character? What do you think the character would hope in this next chapter? Because we're getting to Captain America 4, as folks know.
I think his mind is completely changed by what he sees, and I think Isaiah has lived enough history to know that whatever you see is what is actually happening. You know, the nation tells you all sorts of things about its ideals and programs, and as far as the racial situation in this country, I don't think anything has been studied more. Isaiah, through his experience and the history he's lived, does not expect America to achieve what he sees it has achieved by the time Sam is made Captain America. And he has doubts about it. And he, in some ways, it's, he feels he's operating, I think, from love. Just telling this younger brother, listen, man, I've been there. And they told me stuff was going to happen. It didn't turn out that way. So I don't want you to be a fool and believe it. It's impossible. And what he hears from Sam is, well, maybe it is impossible, but if it was possible, here's what it would look like. And it happens. So he's definitely changed. Obviously, he's going to keep going on because all he's trying to do now is just live. And I think what he expects to see is that the character that Sam exhibits is something that is familiar to him, and that maybe someone born of a generation produced by a different America, which it must have become a different America, certainly in 40 years he's been away, because, point of fact, Sam is Captain America. It's much in the same way I suppose I felt when this country elected Barack Obama. 5 years prior to that, if someone said, yeah, I think a Black president is on the way, you might have said, I don't think so. I don't think the country is ready. You don't know what you're ready for sometimes until it's happening. So I think Isaiah's greatly encouraged and watchful. Yeah. And I think Sam is going to turn it out.
I like that. Anthony, I want to get to that speech because look, the series was incredible, but it feels like everything's leading up to that moment. But more so than what you were saying, there was so much incredible non-verbal acting that was going on that was underscoring that speech. And Wyatt, I think you had one of the more complex ones that maybe doesn't get examined as much, which is that while Sam is giving that speech, it's just relitigating everything that's happened and put, those horrible actions in a starker contrast. And I'm just curious, what did Kari say, sort of setting up that scene? What direction did you sort of have? Because again, that speech is just such a great moment, but it doesn't have the resonance that it has without everybody doing all of the intercut scenes underneath it. So yeah, talk about that setup for you, or did you know that that's what it was going to be playing underneath?
Honest to God, it was just listening to Anthony, say the words he was saying. You're just listening intently as the person, and you have thoughts about what's going on. But really, it's kind of a boring answer, but you're just listening. and then then I'd look at Sebastian, and because that there's a moment of connection between them that needed to happen, and I remember what was interesting actually was when Anthony comes by after he's done with the speech. We kind of talked about it. Anthony was like, maybe we have more of a moment, do you remember that? Where like maybe we have a little bit more of a moment. And then we kind of, I think thought about it for a second and was like, no, it's just like this, like an unspoken kind of nod of me having a moment of recognition, just a moment of realizing that all of these things that he had said and these words that he had said for John probably still have to sink in, but it was, I think, important that John still has the backbone of who he is, and he understands more of who he is now, but has to listen respectfully, I guess is what I was trying to do. I guess that's a better answer.
No, it's great.
But,
hey, listening is, I mean, I think it's key to it, because like I said, it may have been a simple moment for you, but again, I do feel like it just makes everything in that moment so much more powerful. And then Anthony, for you, I mean, you get that script, you know what it is, they're setting it up for you. Talk through your process on that day, because again, like, I don't know, I mean, I guess you had to, reading that, knowing how that was going to frame the series and how that was going to be the thing that, like, you know, when we're setting up, you know, reels for FYC, that's the speech right there. That's going out there. It's a moment.
Well, it's funny because what Malcolm wrote was literally like the hollis opus of Shakespearean Black feelings for the past 100 years. And I mean, when I first read what he actually wrote, I was really moved. I was taken aback because no one had ever put my feelings, my complexity and confusion about the state of African-American men in this country into words so eloquently and beautifully. So I went to Kari and I was like, Kari, this is too Black. And, and she would, you know, so we sat down and the three of us really combed through it and really figured out what was important and what was Sam trying to say, not what I was trying to say or what Malcolm was trying to say, but what was Sam trying to say? Because I think, you know, with Sam was really interesting, and what I love about this character, the counseling through line that started from the first scene when you meet him until the last scene in the series. You know, Steve Rogers is a super soldier. He's a muscle Captain America. So he fights his way through confrontation, whereas Sam Wilson is a counselor. So he's more of a intellectual. He's, you know, the entire situation with the Flag Smashers, he didn't try to beat them and kill them and, you know, throw them off the bridge. No, he tried to counsel them off the ledge. You know, so they're two very different characters, two very different Captain Americas, and race has nothing to do with it. You know, there was a certain level of compassion that comes along with Steve Rogers as well, and you saw that in Civil War. So, you know, the idea of where we are as a country and what that monologue meant was really huge for me because I have sons. And I know when I have a party at the house for my boys, literally the backyard looks like a racial Skittle box. You know, there's just every little race you can think of running around trying to get in the swimming pool. But I realize when I go to a party with my son to one of his friends' house, he's usually the only Black kid. And, you know, we've had some conversations, and I always have my son in those conversations with other adults, because at some point in time, your reality should reflect everything around you. And I want my kids to have a reality where they're not pigeonholed into one idea of what they think their race, their culture, their masculinity is. And I think, you know, with this series, what Malcolm was able to put in that monologue so beautifully is we're all Americans. We're all humans. You know, a borderless society is what we're dealing with in the world today. You know, so it's interesting when you look at it from that perspective and really personally, you know, question how do you feel about that and how does that affect you? So, you know, it was that monologue was really, you know, and I hope Malcolm prints it and like puts it in the LA Times or something.
Just about to say, because now I want to. I'm like,
it's really amazing, but it really calls into question who we are as individuals and not who Sam is as a character. And I think that's why the show and the episode and that moment was so timely, because at the end of the day, you see Sam and Bucky walking off together.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's through all of this, through all the crazy race, crazy stuff, you know, you see these two guys with appreciation and love become friends and, you know, ride off into the sunset together.
Excellent. We just have a couple more before we get out of here. I want to end on a somewhat of a lighter moment and ask all of you, because the show does have tons of laughs and I don't want to dismiss it, what your favorite giggle was. Mine was Daniel doing his little fist pump. Like I rewind that and giggle all the time. But before I do that, Sebastian, I wanted to talk to you about another thing. Again, this is going out to SAG, mostly actors and performers. And I love nonverbal acting moments, anytime where it's not just what's written on the page and it's not really even in the stage direction. It's a choice made by the actor on the day and something that they're processing. And another, I think, incredible moment for that is when, you know, Florence as the Dora Milaje comes and takes off Bucky's arm. And like, that was not only something that was talked about from like, this is just an incredible and shocking moment, but it was just dissected in so many different ways by, you know, folks in my industry and then also fans. And so I'm just curious how you dissected that moment on the day and yeah, just how you processed that, because the line afterwards says it's like, did you know that was going to happen? No, but yeah, it sort of plays out so beautifully.
No, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I think that there was a lot going on in that in that exchange. I mean, because for one thing, you know, again, like Bucky had a second shot, you know what I mean, and Wakanda gave him that. So it's like, you know, it's inevitable, you know, and he knows where his loyalty and relationship lie. However, he's put in a situation in the show where he's having to test boundaries and relationships as a result. And, you know, he's also driven by slight triggers and personal motives that are, you know, unrealized desires he may have towards setting the score with Zemo, you know, and you know, he's kind of like torn in figuring out his boundaries. And that's a moment where it's like, okay, you're right at the edge. You know what I mean? And it's like, don't forget where you're coming from now, you know? And I think it's the learning of that, but then also, you know, in the comic books, you know, Bucky has, like, he learns how to detach his arm and use it and throw it and all this stuff. So it's like, there was another piece of it also, which was like, okay, like now we can do this. So I think, but I think it's just a humbling moment for him. You know, it's he's put in his place, you know, and he needs to, you know, and it's a little bit of like, oh, that's right. I only got this arm to, you know, whatever, like hang in there with. So maybe I should be a little bit more protective of it.
Yeah. And I do love that it immediately makes him stop fighting. Like that was, again, just a very well done scene, really set up kind of incredibly. Again, the series has a great balance between comedy and drama and really touching on like sociopolitical issues. But I definitely want to leave us here today with a bit of the comedy. And I kind of teased it a bit earlier, but favorite joke and or funny moment, either that was on screen specifically or something that you noticed in someone's choices. For me personally, like I said, Daniel doing his little dance as Zemo in the club, and then both of your just kind of annoyance, I think, at what he was doing. Also, Sam, when you say that I look like a pimp, that one was another one that just cracked me up every time. Anthony, sorry, when you said Sam's like, I look like a pimp. Anthony, I'll start with you. What was your favorite laugh of the series?
There was two. The weirdest, I would say the funniest, well, we were on this private jet shooting the scene with Zemo, and the dude who played his butler,
yeah,
he would get stuck. It was like somebody pushed the button and he would be like, So we have all these pictures of him because he was literally like 105 years old.
It was like, where are we going? Like Batman? Like, yeah.
And then there was the day we were joking around on set and we came up with the line, you know, spend a little time in Wakanda and you come out White Panther. That's my favorite line that, like, nobody caught it, but it makes me so happy every time.
It's good though.
They will catch it now. Next, what was your favorite laugh of the series?
Who, me?
Wyatt.
Oh, sorry.
Go.
Wyatt. And then I'll keep going around. Sebastian, we're going to end with you.
Tough to beat Zemo dancing. I mean,
I know.
it's tough to beat it. That probably was my best giggle. The other stuff that like didn't. There was one day where I'm sure, I don't even know if it made it in. I can't even remember, but it was just me and Sebastian like running down tunnels. And every time we turn around, it felt like a Benny Hill sketch where it was just dudes running back and forth from side of the screen to the other side of the screen. And I, as far as a day of me giggling, that was probably one of my better giggles.
I like that one. Emily, what about you? What was your favorite giggle of the series? Either one that you had or one that you saw on screen?
Oh man, there were a lot. I mean, a lot of it was like circumstantial. Like I remember the day we were in the shipping container. Do you guys remember that? And just like it was just take after take. There's an explosion, and so it's just us falling over and over and over again. And you just kind of think, like, speaking of bruises and scrapes and stuff, I mean, just doing it over and over again, and then like putting earplugs in because it's super, you just think like, what is this that we do for a living? You know, because like sometimes it's not acting, it's just, you know, this like physical, and if you don't see the humor, then it's kind of painful. But
Right.
I remember just us falling all over each other, just thinking, okay, well, this is what today's about, and just giggling quite a bit. But there's so many funny moments in the show. It's hard to pinpoint one. I thought that was grasped pretty well, the humor in the midst of all the other amazing stuff. So, but that day sticks out as just like, what are we doing?
I want that supercut, because that's what blooper reels were made of. Disney for the Blu-ray. Let's make it happen. Carl, what about you? What was because your scenes were definitely not light for the most part, but you still managed to put a little zinger in there. Like when you tell Bucky, like, I whooped his butt. Like I know that's not supposed to make me laugh, but that made me laugh.
I'm disappointed to hear that.
I know.
No. I think there was a moment, because it reminded me so much of my father, and it was when Isaiah has just had this moment of looking at Sam and saying, "Man, you are something." I mean, you ain't a Martin, because that my father coaches at a certain point when men of that generation open up too much and let too much of their heart out, they have to immediately come back and try to, undercut you a little bit, just to let you know, you're not all of that. And so that made me giggle a little bit. It was actually the one time I thought, well, don't break, because I always found it was funny when my dad did it to me, and so it reminded me of that.
I will say the reason why I laughed is because that is my father, Jerome Coley, my father. Any dude that came into my parents' house, he'd be like, I would mess him up. Like, it didn't matter. Like, he's just like ready to, like, it's very much like Will Smith in Bad Boys 2. Man, I'm going to get you. So that's why that one made me laugh.
Great.
It's the thing of the generations, Oh yeah, your wing broke. When I was your age, we didn't have wings. We ran fast.
Exactly. So good. And Sebastian, I'll end with you. Favorite laugh of the series?
Man, there's a lot. But look, they all revolve around Anthony, obviously. I'll just say this. There was that scene in Madripoor where he has to drink the snake thing. I have to tell you, I mean, it was so hard not to laugh, because we did it so many times. And he was like, Kari, why are you having me do this again? Every time it was like another double reaction. It was so funny. But then I think one of my other, and then another thing that I always loved is just like, again, why Wyatt is he did such a great job with this thing. Like, honestly, like in the wrong hands, it could have gone in so other ways that you don't even know, because of the good job that he did. But he had, one of the hard things that I thought he had to do was, he has a lot of scenes where he's 2 steps behind. He's coming back in, you know, like, and a way to, he always found a way to make that interesting. And, but I could see the struggle, you know, in there of like, why? Here's another scene where I'm like, hi guys, like, John, I have to ask the question, you know, and I'd always like throw him that Titanic line of like, good of you to come, John. Here you are again, you know, and then basically just watching Daniel and Wyatt turn to me in scenes when, you know, where we were with Anthony and go, is he really like this? Is that going to happen? He's going to say, I'd be like, yep, join the club. Get in the back seat. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Watching them like process that, like, oh no, Anthony's, yeah, he's going to say it and do that. It was fun. Man.
That's fun.
Oh, well, this was a blast. Thank you all so much. It was a treat to chat this series with you all. I want to thank again the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. Again, you can find the description about their COVID Relief Fund in the description below. But again, I want to thank you all for being here today. And this was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.